Hi, my name's Dale South, and I'm team leader for a brand new church plan in Washington, D.C. called Church of Jesus the Reconciler. Being the seat of power of a very powerful nation, it's easy to think of Washington, D.C. in terms of how it impacts national and international politics, or to see it as a city with lots of monuments that tourists go to see. To do this, though, is to miss seeing the more than 500,000 individuals who actually live here. The name, Jesus the Reconciler, is very intentional. Washington, D.C. tends to be a very polarized city. It's home to some of the most influential and powerful people in the world, as well as some of the least powerful. Many people come here in hopes of changing the world for the better. But there are huge differences of opinion as to how one goes about making that happen. There are divisions caused by racial, political, economic, generational, and cultural differences. The Church of Jesus the Reconciler, Jesus has brought us back into a restored relationship with God because He radically loved us. I'm so glad He did not just tolerate us. He's teaching us to actually love people we wouldn't ordinarily have gotten along with. He is the great reconciler, and as His church, we're to be ambassadors of that reconciliation. We're convinced that there are unseen spiritual forces at the root of our separation from God. They try to get people to love and depend on the created things rather than the Creator God. These forces will not be overcome by political power plays, by economic policies, by military might. These forces can only be overcome by Jesus the Reconciler. In the early church, for the first few centuries, Christians had an ethic of pacifism and didn't really want to fight in the wars. Some of the people were calling them cowards. One of the early church fathers, Origen, went and said, "These men are not cowards, but the prayers of these men will be of more value to the king than thousands of soldiers." In 2 Corinthians 10:4, the Apostle Paul writes, "The weapons we fight with are not the weapons of the world. On the contrary, they have divine power to demolish strongholds." The Church of Jesus the Reconciler believes, as Jesus taught, that humanity's deepest problems are at root problems of the heart. The deep changes God desires to make in us and in the people of Washington, D.C. will only come from changed hearts. However clever our strategies or talented our members, only God can change people's hearts for the good. Prayer, fervent, persistent prayer that storms the very gates of hell will be our most effective weapon. We're looking for thousands of prayer partners to join in praying for Washington, D.C. and its residents. We'd like to know that every single block of the District of Columbia is being prayed for. And we invite you to partner with us in the following specific prayer actions. Please pray that God would allow us to find favor with residents of the city, just as Joseph did in Egypt and Daniel did in Babylon. Please pray that God would lead us to persons of peace among the working poor and affluent professionals, among high-rise dwellers, among internationals, among students. Please pray that God would call out His choice servants to come live and work in Washington, D.C. Investing their lives here is part of the church planning team. Please pray for other churches in Washington who are seeking to be faithful to the gospel. Many of them are working hard to see people come to know and grow in Christ. Pray that God would lead churches from across the United States of America to partner with us. There are many opportunities for volunteer mission teams to do servant evangelism and prayer walks. We also ask for very special prayer for the children in our nation's capital. 1 out of 3 children in Washington, D.C. lives in poverty. Half of the city's children are at risk of going to bed hungry at night. We ask you to consider taking part in a virtual prayer walk without leaving your home. On this website, click on the link that says prayer and go to the part that says virtual prayer walk. You'll see how you can pray for a specific block of Washington, D.C. Please pray that the Spirit of God would direct our nation's leaders to govern wisely and justly. As you pray for the President, don't forget to pray for the senators and representatives from your home state. Also pray that God would give the Supreme Court justices wisdom from on high to rightly decide important cases. Also pray for the hundreds of governmental and non-governmental agencies whose decisions made here in Washington, D.C. will impact the world. Now, it seems that God has really brought the world here to Washington, D.C. There are over 180 embassies and consulates represented in our nation's capital. Global religions are widely represented. I'm personally praying that God would take at least one representative from every one of those embassies and consulates and send them back to their home country as a follower of Jesus Christ, committed to sharing the gospel there. Would you join me in that prayer? Please pray that every people group represented would have a biblical church ministering the gospel in culturally appropriate ways here in the city. Please pray that the witness of area churches would be so winsome to people of other religions that they would be drawn to the person of Jesus Christ. Pray that decisions made in Washington, D.C. would bless the nations.